Are you bored living a mediocre life? We were too, and we know how to change that. Each week, we'll leave our comfort zones to explore a new topic, then step onto our soapboxes, a safe space to sound off on our latest adventure. Come explore with us. All opinions are welcome. This is a mindset. This is a lifestyle. This is Siren Soapbox.
Hello and welcome, fellow explorers. Thank you for diving in. Our mission is to get you out of your comfort zone and into exploration, because that's where real growth happens. We want to take you along with us on our next adventure. Find out how by going to www.sirensoapbox.com. Click Dive In and Explore to learn more. Better yet, send us a challenge. Hop over to the Contact Us section and fill out the form. You could be a guest on the show. That is exactly how our guests found themselves on Siren Soapbox today. Hear that sound? That is the sound of a nice cold brew. That's right, we're diving headfirst into beer. Unfortunately, not literally. Today's challenge was sent to us by Siren TC fanboy, her boyfriend Dean. His mission for us was to visit a local brewery and learn everything you can about it. Start with their story. How did they come to exist? Then take a tour and learn how they make their brews. Is there something that sets them apart from their competitors? Do they specialize in certain flavors? Do they have a mission outside of selling beer or a connection with the local community? Finally, end the visit with a flight of their brews and share which one you like the best. Sirens, did we accept this mission?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we did. But first, if at any time the conversation gets too intense, our safe word is mango. First up on her soapbox is Jess. She sent her soapbox in all the way from Hawaii, so we will take a listen to that now.
For the first time.
Actually went to a meadery where they make mead. I do not like beer, and there's actually only one brewery on Kauai. So when I was searching for a brewery to go to and I discovered this meadery, it sounded more my style. I have actually never tried mead, but it's supposed to be not exactly the same as beer or wine. So I went into Nani Moon Meadery, which is local here on Kauai and actually the only meadery in Hawaii. So that was pretty cool too. They use Hawaii-made honey. Well, not really made, grown. I don't really know what you would consider honey, but it was really, really tasty. It was interesting how they source local fruits and even coffee and chili, like chili peppers. One of their meads was spicy, and they make it all just in the back room of this little shop. And when I went in, they were actually preparing a batch and trying to get the honey to be more liquid so that they could pour it and start making a batch. I sampled 7 different meads, and I think my favorite was the pineapple lime, which makes sense because Hawaiian pineapple is delicious. And the woman who helped me, which I forgot to get her name because I'm terrible, was super nice and also explained to me how mead is the oldest recorded alcoholic beverage, at least in written recording. So I thought that was very interesting as well. So I hope everyone enjoyed their tours, and I definitely look forward to going back and sampling as they do different seasonal meads at this little shop. Hope you all had fun. Can't wait to hear about it.
All right. Well, it's me, Mer. It's my turn now. A couple of nights ago, Mark and I took a tour of Rangai's Brewery here in Cincinnati. The brewery opened in 2013 and was started by a couple of guys who were actually looking for a place that had a good potential for selling coffee, and Cincinnati was chosen for that. But what they learned when they got here was that there was a real gap in the IPA market in the Midwest. So they decided they were going to open a brewery that focused on making a really good IPA, and making a really good IPA they did. Now, beer is basically four ingredients, but each brewery's flavor profiles are based on their own blends of grain, which is usually a malted barley, and the amounts and types of hops they use during the brewing process. Now, Rheingeist's flagship beer, or their original, is called Truth, which is a flavorful and robust IPA. IPAs are full of hops, and they have a very distinct flavor profile. Truth is by far their largest seller, making up 55% of the brewery's sales. So it's safe to say that that is their specialty. They do have a couple of other IPAs on their menu as well. But Truth is also the number one selling craft beer in the state of Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. And for good reason, it's delicious. But Rheingeist does more than sell beer. They give away all of their spent grain to local cattle farmers. I'm talking tens of thousands of pounds per day. After they boil the grain, it still has some nutritional value because of the protein, it's still present. So they just let farmers come and pick it up for free for their herds. They also host an event every Wednesday called Charitable Suds. For every pint you purchase in the tap room, you receive a wooden nickel to deposit in one of the 3 local featured nonprofit organizations. And each wooden nickel equals $1 donated to that charity. Also, as of July 2021, this year, Rheingeist Brewery is now 100% employee owned. So that's a pretty cool fact. I learned all of this on my tour with Mike. He was great. We learned so much, not just about Rheingeist, but also about the process of brewing beer, as well as Cincinnati's rich brewing history. Now, I love a good Truth, which was their flagship IPA, but I wanted to taste some different beers while I was there. I ended up tasting 9 different drinks in all, not full pours, but Mark and I, we often share our beers so that we get to taste more. My personal favorite was their table beer. It's a grisette and it's a little tart, nothing overwhelming. And it's also a great introduction to sour ales, which I really love. It's very drinkable with a low 4.5% ABV, and it's absolutely delicious. LC, how was your brewery tour?
Well, I have to admit, I was a little skeptical that this challenge would get me out of my comfort zone, but it did in a couple ways. 2 weekends ago, we attempted this challenge blind. We were going to go to Cartridge Brewing, and I was like, hold up. I did the adventure challenge and the bike challenge there. I am not doing a third challenge there. It's time to branch out. So we tried to go to Valley Vineyards over in Morrow. They have a brewery called Cellar Dweller. I don't recommend Googling that. It looks like a really messed up 80s horror film. So I guess that was my first mistake. My next mistake is that we went on a Saturday night. And then the third mistake is that even though it was packed, we tried to go in anyway. It was complete chaos. There were people in lines everywhere. Nobody knew what was going on. Panic set in. I called Mango. We left. And the following weekend, I knew that we'd be in Gatlinburg. So I reached out to the Gatlinburg Brewing Company, mainly because their logo is adorable. And even though it's not local to me, we go to Gatlinburg several times a year, so I think it counts. They were so friendly and helpful setting up a time to tour. We arrived about an hour before they opened and talked with one of the brewers named Phil. He is a wealth of knowledge on beer. Gatlinburg Brewing Company has 2 locations, one in Gatlinburg proper and the other in Pigeon Forge. This is the location we went to. Phil told us that this location was a great place to grab a brew and a pizza to wait out the traffic, which there's a lot. GBC is a great place, it's a place that started as a home brewer and then it took off from there. Don't Feed the Bears is one of the original recipes, and part of the proceeds from this goes to help local bears. So there was a small typo in the challenge and it said bear instead of beer at some point. So I'm hoping I get extra credit points for that. Their flavors are seasonally driven. Tourists come usually at certain times of the year every year, and they try to match a few so that they have something familiar to look forward to. And then they also try and put a couple new things on the menu as well. Gatlinburg location goes through about 15 kegs over a typical weekend. That's around 1,860 pints. We got to go back and see the process. It was a little bit over my head, but I did learn a lot. They pulled a new beer in rotation while we were there called I Love It When You Call Me Big Papa. It's what I'm drinking tonight, and as my husband said as we were doing the tasting, this is stupid good. It is the best beer I've ever had, and the brewers harvest the pawpaws themselves. The food was phenomenal. The service was so friendly. I highly recommend Gatlinburg Brewing Company. Make sure to check it out when you're there. And you can also see the rest of my behind the scenes footage over on our YouTube channel. TC, how did it go for you?
Well, this episode didn't necessarily get me out of my comfort zone either, but it did encourage me to explore something I probably wouldn't have otherwise, and I'm glad I did. We toured the Leatherback Brewery on the island of St. Croix in U.S. Virgin Islands. If you visit our island, you should definitely book a tour with them. While on the tour, we learned so many things about the beer, the company, and the island. Leatherback Brewery was in the process of being built in the same year Hurricanes Irma and Maria hit the island in 2017. In order to keep forward momentum, the owners and brewmaster rolled up their sleeves and started building the brewery themselves. It was a huge learning curve for them and a huge challenge, but it also means they know every inch of that place. And there's something special about knowing every part of your business in this way. During the tour, Brewmaster Dave taught us about the different types of malt used in beers and how they impact the flavor. We even got to taste the malts. We tasted malt that had a delicious nutty flavor, one that was a lot richer and had almost a bitter flavor, and another type that was really sour. I wasn't a fan of that one. We also learned about the added challenges brewery faces getting the malt to an island in the Caribbean. Even though St. Croix is owned by the United States, we're often considered international for shipping purposes. The brewmaster has to order the ingredients months before he needs them to be sure they arrive on time. The brewery has some flagship beers they always brew and have available. They also do some special brews using local flavors. They've used local mango, carambola, soursop, and naturally growing herbs and bush plants. The brewery is also very eco-conscious. The main ingredient in their beers is rainwater. They're almost finished going completely solar powered. So their beers are literally made from Caribbean rain and sunshine. They also started a can recycling program called Show Your Island Love. We tried every flavor of beer they had, and my favorite was Beach Life, a blonde ale. But my favorite label is on their Reef Life beer with a turtle on their can, just like my hat. The brewery is named after the leatherback sea turtle, which nests on the beaches of St. Croix. And as their website describes, these majestic creatures are world travelers, yet those born on the island return when the time comes to give life to the next generation. I love Leatherback Brewery for every reason a brewery can be loved. I didn't go on this brewery tour alone. I was the lucky one who was accompanied by the challenger behind this adventure. Dean Cook has lived on St. Croix for 5 years. Before moving to the island, he lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and raised two of the best people I've ever met. When Dean isn't hard at work building spreadsheets and financial models, you can find him diving beneath the surface of the Caribbean or traveling off to explore new places and people with his girlfriend, yours truly, the siren with the orange tail, TC. Sirens, please welcome Dino to this episode of Siren Soapbox.
Welcome, Dean.
Hey, thank you. It's
Dean,
exciting here.
I have a question for you.
Okay, what's that?
Which of the beers was your favorite?
So there are two that are my favorite. And we no doubt found a few that I never want to have cross my palate again. So as far as craft beers go, I don't really enjoy extremely hoppy beers or the dark ales or porters. I like a lighter beer. So they have two that I like. One is called Island Life, which is a lager. And then they also have Beach Life, which is a blonde ale, which is, I think, Tracy, you mentioned just a minute ago. There you go. So those two are my favorite.
Is the blonde ale your favorite because you like blonde so much?
That could have something to do with it.
I love that question.
So what was the original inspiration for this challenge?
Yeah. I don't really remember. I think it came to me while I was driving one day, and trying to think of something I could give you guys as a challenge. And it kind of came across to me that, every city has breweries. And probably why it hit me was I really like hanging out at a brewery. So I guess going somewhere where you're really comfortable isn't necessarily getting out of your comfort zone. But the challenge of trying the other beers and then learning the process and learning the history, I thought would make it. And then my thought was, there are breweries all over the place now. So it's accessible to everybody, even those of us who live on an island, and are lucky enough to have a brewery down here.
So some things that got me out of my comfort zone. One, I am I'm an introverted extrovert, I think. And so sometimes it's really difficult for me to reach out and ask someone to do something for me. So reaching out to someone and asking for this tour was a little bit out of my comfort zone. But we did kind of add the challenge for ourselves that we had to finish all of the beers in the 2 flights that we ordered. And 2 of them were very, very sour. And some people really love sour beers, so I'm sure they're delicious to those people, but they're not delicious to these 2 people, Dean and Tracy. But we had to finish them. So did you guys do anything to make it more out of your comfort zone?
I didn't. That's a great question. Although for me, taking the tour felt a little out of my comfort zone, I guess, because I don't know, it's not something that I would have typically signed up for. Not that I feel like I know everything there is to know. It just never would have occurred to me to go behind the scenes and learn about it, I guess. That's it. I'll edit that out.
You shouldn't. See, what about you?
It was outside of my comfort zone at Valley Vineyards when it was so crowded. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
you just moved some papers.
Again, I'm sorry. So Valley Vineyards was outside my comfort zone because it was so crowded and I hate people bumping into me, go figure. And then it was a little bit uncomfortable reaching out to a brewery and they were super friendly about it. And then going to some place I had never been before and just walking in and saying, hey, I'm here for the tour. Like that was outside the comfort zone for sure. But again, they were just so accommodating and everything about it was magical. I bought a t-shirt and stickers and brought beer home. So it was a great experience.
I love beer so much. I think that's why it didn't really feel like it was outside of my comfort zone. I love everything about beer. It's for my 40th birthday, Mark and I hosted a blind beer tasting for all my friends. It was a ton of fun, but we put a lot of research into that party. So it was a lot of tasting and brewery visits and that sort of thing. But it was fun to do the tour. I'm really glad we did it. I want to do more brewery tours now.
I do too.
I'm going to Columbus in a couple of weeks we're going to be brewery hopping. So we're going to look for at least one of those breweries to take a tour.
That's cool.
I think what's neat.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, it's interesting to me. Again, like I said, I really like the vibe around a brewery. It seems like, everyone is chill and they all get along and it's just a fun place to hang out. But it's interesting how all of these independent breweries always seem to have some type of connection to the community through some type of outreach, or contribution. I always think that's kind of cool too. Because Leatherback thing.
What does Leatherback do? What's there? Oh, the recycling program.
The recycling's one of them, but I mean they host a couple times during the year big events. They have this huge yard outside on the side of the brewery, and they have this huge event with live music and everything to raise money for the local dog shelter or animal shelter.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, so
it's interesting.
They do a lot of stuff.
What I was going to say when Dean and I started talking at the same time was almost exactly what he said. and that is how entwined they are with their communities. I didn't realize that, but all of the stories that we heard today.
What is that feedback?
I don't know.
Are you hearing it, LC?
No.
I heard it.
Oh, it's not me. LC,
Yeah.
mute your microphone for a minute. Now we'll see if we get the feedback. No, I think it's coming from LC's. So weird. Anyway, I think that it's really neat to listen to the pieces of the community that are woven into all of these local breweries. And so, I mean, we travel so much and we try to learn about the areas we go. And this might be a new way to do it, to find a local brewery and see if you can get a tour. It might not be your typical touristy tour, but I bet you would learn a lot. I mean, he talked a lot about the hurricanes and what life was like in the hurricanes because there were no workers available. So they basically had to just, like I said, roll up their sleeves and build the place.
That when you were talking about that and you mentioned that you become very intimately you know your business very intimately when you do that type of work. It reminded me of your boat because you put a lot of work into that boat and you felt a very intimate connection with that boat.
Yeah,
So
it reminded me of that too.
To add to what you just said, I learned a whole lot about Cincinnati's brewing history on this tour. And the tour wasn't a Cincinnati brewing tour, but Cincinnati played a pretty big role in the beer industry. In fact, in the turn of the century, the three biggest cities for beer brewing were Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Cincinnati. And I did not know that until Mike from Rain Guys told us about that.
Interesting. I'm curious, LC, what the logo is at, did you say Gatlinburg Brewing Company?
It is this cute little bear with a beard.
Oh, he is cute.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, cute.
I got that on the shirt, and on the back it says, "Our pizza is 10 inches even when it's cold outside."
That's hilarious.
That's great.
So, I mean, they got a good sense of humor. And I had a little bit of a moment when I was there, and I messaged you girls like, "Oh, I want to tell you something so bad, but I can't because I got to wait for the soapbox." So they had two beers on the menu. One is called Mountain Merman, which Mur would love because it is a super sour beer, and it's also a little bit salty. It's like there's
It's a Saison.
sure. The sour salty beer, so that's why they named it Mountain Merman. And then the other one was called Trishnicious, which made me think of Trish, who we had
Oh,
on
that's funny.
And when we went and did our tour in the back, we were at this machine, and he said this one does this whirlpool effect. And he said it takes all the hops and it spins it around and gets all the gunk to the center. And it was like, he sounds like Trish from last week. Like I couldn't believe it. It was such like a cool moment.
Yeah, her swimming pool analogy. That's awesome.
Our tour guide told us the same exact thing about one of their kettles does the same thing. It just kind of swirls everything to the center. That's exactly what I thought about.
Just like us.
Did either of you two get to eat any of the malt?
No.
It was so good. It's nutty. It's like eating nuts.
Well,
that was cool.
I think if it had been a private tour, I might have asked. Since you got to do it, like, I want to try it. But it wasn't a private tour. Mark signed us up for a tour. They do tours every hour on Saturday afternoons. And he signed us up for the last one this past Saturday. And there were about 15 people on the tour. So it was a pretty big group. So, I guess they didn't want anybody's COVID hands on the malt.
LC
Bar.
for the Gatlinburg Brewery. The owner or the owners or the founders, I mean, are they local people, or how did they end up in Gatlinburg?
I didn't ask how they ended up in Gatlinburg. There was just so much information. I got easily a half hour of video and just so much information coming at me and so many questions that it was a little bit overwhelming. But I do know he was he was local and he started as a home brewer, which makes me kind of want to start brewing at home. And then just decided to open up a restaurant, and it's taken off.
Taking off from there. That's cool.
What about the owner of Leatherback? He's probably not from St. Croix, is my guess.
So there are 4 owners, and 2 of them are from I know one is from
One.
St. Croix. One of them is from St.
yes.
Croix. And then there are attachments in all these other ways, but 3 of the 4 currently live on the island. And the 4th one visits whenever he can.
Yeah, I'll just kind of expand on that a little bit. Well, I thought it was interesting is the guy who grew up here on St. Croix. He knew a guy in Philadelphia who owned several breweries, and he contacted him and said, "Hey, I want to distribute your beer down here because there are no good IPAs down here in the Caribbean. And I think we can get a lot of beer distributed for you all throughout the Caribbean." And so the guy came down from Philadelphia, and he was here for several days, just scoping things out. And he looked at him and he said, "I don't want to distribute down here." He goes, "Why don't we just make a brewery?" And so then it started up from there. And then they got some other people involved, and then the brewmaster was somebody who worked for him up in Philadelphia, and he at the time had left him and was working for a competitor, and he contacted him and his wife or girlfriend, I don't know what it was at the time, but and said, "Hey, we're going to open this brewery in St. Croix. Do you want to come be our brewmaster and run it for us?" And his wife actually has years of experience running the front of the house. The food part and managing the employees and all that stuff. So that's what our brewmaster, Dave, he and his wife, they kind of run the brewery, and he's the brewmaster. So that's kind of how it started. So that was kind of neat.
That was kind of an interesting challenge that TC brought up, that they have to figure out ways to get the malt or the barley, whatever, to the island.
He was talking about some of the places that they bought malt in the States, but to get the malt, I don't know, was it from Scotland? It was from some other country, but wherever it was that they would get this malt from, they wouldn't ship it here. And then he found another place that would ship it here, but it was like 4 times the cost of what it was to ship it to the States. And somehow he stumbled upon a malt. Dino probably remembers the story really well, but he stumbled upon a malt that had exactly the flavor he wanted, and it was a lot less expensive to get here. So it was just kind of a trial and error to get that particular malt that they use for most of their beers. And then they have one that's like that. It almost tastes like coffee, but it has kind of a bitter taste that sticks around when you're done eating it. And that was for some of the darker beers, I think. And then he had one that was really sour, and that was for their sour beers. But it was something to do with the pH level makes it really sour. Neither one of us liked it.
The logistics is crazy though. I mean, he's ordering months and months in advance. And he's ordering, containerfuls at a time to get it here. So it's definitely more of a challenge for him.
Yeah, it's probably affecting their ability to scale as well.
A little bit, but they have started distributing into Puerto Rico. They opened a second brewery on St. Thomas. So they're making beer on St. Thomas. They don't make all of the lines or all the flavors over there. They make, just the most like popular 4, I think, or 5. And then they are also distributing into South Florida now. Well, not the Keys, but just into South Florida. They were going to be in the Keys, and there was somebody who makes a beer in the Keys that had a very similar name or something, and they filed a suit against them. So
it's either Beach Life or Island Life. I think it's Island Life. It's one of those two.
And so they decided not to fight it, and apparently this Island Life is the one that's already exists in the Keys and isn't doing really well anyway. So, but they're all through South Florida right now. So they're trying to scale, but yeah, I think logistics does hurt. And he told us, if I'm not mistaken, Tracy, that they're the only beer that's actually brewed in the Caribbean. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Caribe, which is sold all throughout the Caribbean, is not brewed in the Caribbean. It's brewed stateside somewhere. And then St. John's Brewery, which is over on the island of St. John, is also brewed stateside, like in Miami, and then shipped down to St. John. So Leatherback's the only one that's actually brewed in the Caribbean.
I think that's true. Yeah. That was
So
interesting to learn.
Rheingeist told us that now they produce around 100,000 barrels of beer per year. So their operation is probably a lot bigger than
They're
Leatherback
huge.
and Gatlinburg. They're the 25th largest in the nation, the 25th largest craft brewery in the nation.
Man.
So they said that their bottleneck is hops. And remember, their flagship is an IPA, and their beers take a lot of hops. They have to place their hops orders 2 years in advance.
Wow.
They're forecasting 2 years in advance and contracting with hops farmers in the Pacific Northwest for 2 years in advance. That's
Wow.
crazy
Big
to
time.
think about.
Yeah, that's big time.
That was something that surprised me too at Gatlinburg Brewing Company. Was we asked, like, how do you plan for the beer flavors that are out? Like, you just put them out, or how does this happen? And there are 5 main brewers that they have, and they sit down, they have meetings, and they have to schedule out, well, this one's going to take a month in the process. And it was just so fascinating to learn that there is so much more thought behind all the flavors and when they're going to be coming out and released than I think people take that for granted.
Yeah.
For sure. Actually, this weekend at Rheingeist, they were selling flights of, it was like 4 different flavored brews. I don't know that they were necessarily beers. They weren't seltzers. They were some kind of alcoholic beverage, and they were selling flights of them for $4, and then they wanted you to complete a survey. So you got this little like QR code, you go on and you taste the beer, then you give them some feedback on each one. And I thought that was really cool that they were seeking the public opinion in that way. And they were only doing it in the tap room Saturday and Sunday. If you look on their website now, it's gone. There's like no evidence of it. But that was a really cool thing. And we also, for participating in that survey, we got 20% off in their merch store.
Nice. What did you buy?
Nothing yet.
Oh.
Yeah, nothing yet, but the code's good until November 30th.
So I showed up in my work shirt, so I had no choice but to buy a shirt. And this hat had a turtle on it, so I had no choice.
I will tell
No
you that
choice.
since the minimalist challenge, I have a really hard time just buying things.
I love it.
So that's why I didn't use my 20% off yet.
Nice.
I bought 2 shirts while I was in Gatlinburg, and I was like, no, I just got rid of a bunch of stuff, but it was so amazing coming home. I unpacked that night and I was done because I got rid of so much stuff.
Yeah, you didn't have all the extra crap with you too. That's awesome.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I
That's
am
nice.
a little bit sad, 1, that Jess isn't here for, obvious reasons, but 2, I've got questions for her.
Same.
I know.
And also, like, I feel like maybe she just hasn't met the right beer yet, and this would have been the perfect challenge to meet the right beer.
Yeah.
Sure.
Have
Have you ever been to a meadery?
I went in Gatlinburg.
I've never been to a meadery.
Me either.
I don't even
Did
think
you
I've
say you
ever
went,
had
you did in
mead.
Gatlinburg?
Yeah, I was drinking mead before I opened up this bad boy.
Is
Ah,
mead sweet?
It's incredibly sweet. The one I got,
Yeah.
it's a bee company right next to Anakista, and it was $14 for a flight tasting. Like everywhere else, it's like $5 or it's free in Gatlinburg. It was $15 here. It's expensive.
I've heard that mead takes a shit ton of honey to make. So that's probably why
does.
it's so expensive.
Yeah. I've been to one too. There's one in Atlanta. I've been. It's interesting.
Was it good?
And I heard it was good. And I heard the same story there that Jess shared, that it's the world's oldest alcoholic beverage.
I'll have to send a picture of the can. That's what it says on the can that I bought, that it's the world's oldest alcohol.
Mhm.
I knew
Yeah.
that because of the New York Times crossword puzzle.
Oh,
See, I would have guessed wine. I would have lost that.
Me too. That's why I knew that it's not wine, because wine didn't fit. Mead did.
Even though it has 4 letters. That was
Right.
probably trickery.
It was so trickery.
Mhm.
There is or was a mead made here on St. Croix.
Oh, really?
Pre-COVID, we always had, was once a month or every 2 weeks or something. It was the Friday deal. What's that called, Tracy?
Jump up.
Jump Up. There was a honey guy that he would always set up a stand at Jump Up, but he also made mead.
Yep. I have tried it. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, I swear I tried
But
it somewhere.
he only had like one flavor. That was it, so
Right.
Was it too sweet for you? Do you remember?
it's pretty sweet. I mean, I remember all the ones I tasted in Atlanta were very sweet, but they had all sorts of different flavors, different fruits they used and everything else. It was kind of neat.
Mer, I'm wondering if you know anything about the logo at Rheingeist, like what
I
that's all about.
don't. Here's the Rheingeist logo. It's like this little ghost
is it?
alien
Like an
skull
alien?
guy.
Yeah.
It's like a ghost
Oh.
alien skull. I don't really know what it is, but
It's like a
cool.
cone head skull.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
very
odd.
cool. It's very recognizable, but I
Mhm.
didn't ask about it. So that's a
That's
fail
not what
on
I
my part.
pictured. Whenever you said the name, I didn't picture that. I pictured, I don't know, something German looking.
Oh yeah, because Rheingeist sounds very German.
Yeah. I didn't
It
picture.
is.
That's really interesting.
Do you know? I mean, the area is over the Rhine,
Mhm.
and Geist means ghost. And that is a skull with a pointy head. I'm sure there's a really good story there.
Well, why the hell didn't Mike tell us then? That's it. I'm freaking lodging a formal complaint.
I think
You may just
should.
have to go back.
Extra
To figure
points.
this out.
Extra points for Brewmaster Dave at Leatherback Brewery.
Why?
why are they
'Cause he
called Leatherback?
One of the owners was into marine biology and leatherback's nest here on our island. And that's why they're called Leatherback.
Yeah,
You worked
that's
for the
pretty awesome.
DPNR for a long time too, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
What's DPNR? For those
Depart-
for those people who might not know that are listening, not for me.
Yes,
Is it Department of Parks and Natural Resources?
that's correct.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
Right, so-
All right. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Elsie.
Oh, well, I was going to ask a new question. Did you have something?
No, you ask your question
Okay.
first.
Does everybody remember their first sip of beer?
Oh.
I mean, I remember the time in my life. I don't remember the first drink specifically, no. But I remember not liking it.
My first sip, I was like 5 years old. My grandfather would always mow the yard in Florida and have his Coors Light with the mountains and everything. And I was curious and I'm like, I want to try it. And I remember having my first sip and I was like, this is awful. Why do people drink this?
Yeah.
But then, of course, it was many, many years later in college when I, drink again. It was Natty Light. Ugh.
Natty Light.
Light. Oh my gosh.
Dino, do you remember your first drink?
I can't even remember the first sip I had this past Saturday. No, I don't remember the exact first one, but I do remember being very young, and I had an older brother who drank a ton of beer all the time, Bush, and I idolized him. Thought he was the coolest thing that walked the earth, and I would take a sip of his beer every now and then. I actually liked it. So
My story is, oh, sorry.
No, that's good.
My story is very similar, actually. I don't know that I idolized my older sister, but I was around her a lot, and her and her friends drank a lot of beers, and they were Little Kings. And I'm pretty sure that was the first beer I ever tasted. It was a Little Kings cream ale.
I think I made it all the way to like middle school before I tasted beer. And it was Budweiser. Do you remember Spuds McKenzie when that was like their whole marketing?
Yes.
Yeah, so I had like a Spuds McKenzie poster on my wall, and I had one of those small refrigerators in my closet when I was in middle school, and I kept Bud Light in there in my bedroom
That's
in middle
hilarious.
school. How old is your son? Elsie.
Middle school.
A fridge full of beer. If he does, he better stare.
All right,
Yeah.
so I found a quiz online. It's a beer quiz. You guys up for some beer quiz questions?
We're up for some quizzing.
All right. First question. Which brand is the most sold beer in the United States?
You just want us to say it aloud?
Do we have to, raise our hand? What do we do?
I have my
Um,
answer. Just
I
know
didn't
your
really
answer.
think this through. All right, so everybody shout out your answers.
Budweiser.
Budweiser.
Bud Light. You were all wrong.
Ooh.
Wait, I thought you said which brand?
Bud Light is the brand.
Aren't they made by Budweiser?
Maybe, but it's Bud Light. So
Okay, I didn't know that was a difference. So
technicality.
I'm giving myself a point because I was ignorant.
Well, you're still
She's not competitive.
Dean and I, so we're all at zero basically.
I know. Okay.
Okay, according to the 1516 Germany purity law, beer can only contain 3 ingredients. What are they?
Malt, barley,
And water.
water. Yeah.
I was gonna say malt, hops, and water.
Yeah. I think she's right with barley though.
Okay, the answer is water, hops, and barley. Now, but hold on. I learned this weekend that malt is just barley after it's been malted. So if
Yeah.
you said malt, I think that you still deserve the point, but you had to have said hops too, because barley and malt are definitely the same thing. They're not two
Yeah.
different things. But yeast is also part of the process, but it wasn't considered an ingredient at the time. Actually, I learned that yeasts, like they make different types of yeasts that are different flavors that create different flavor profiles. So there's like actually a lager yeast and an ale yeast, and I didn't know that.
Hmm.
All right, next question. Which country consumes the most beer per capita? This is not a
Germany.
multiple choice.
United States.
USA.
Czech Republic.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dino's closest, but no.
What's in the neighborhood?
Okay, next question. What does IPA stand for?
Nasty.
Oh, I know.
Independence. What is it?
India Pale Ale.
That's correct.
Oh
So
my God, really?
yes, that's it.
Is it
That's
right
it.
there, like what it says on the can?
Yes, yes, India Pale Ale. So the story behind that is that hops are also a preservative. So beers, and they were brewing a bunch of beer in the UK that they were going to have to ship off to India, but they needed a way to preserve it on the long ship ride. So they just would hop it up. So they labeled that the India Pale Ale because it was being shipped to India on the boat and had to survive the long boat trip.
Oh, that's some good info right there.
I also learned that from Mike, the Rheingei's tour guide.
Good
So
job, Mike.
yeah,
That's
he was
cool.
awesome. I'm telling you, if you're in Cincinnati, take a tour at Rheingei's. It was very informative. In the USA, a barrel contains how many gallons of beer?
Oh, I know this.
I have a guess. I have a
Oh,
guess.
300 gallons. No, dang it. That's so wrong. That's not part of my notes.
Is it 50? No, 55? That sounds low, but
I was going to guess 50, but I think that's low too now that
Yeah.
I'm thinking of it.
I think it's 55. I'm sticking with 55.
I'm sticking with 50.
Hey,
50.
Siri. I'm trying to cheat.
No, you cannot ask Siri.
Wait a minute.
The answer is 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay. Maybe just two more questions, you think?
Sure.
All right. Next one. Reassuringly expensive was the advertising slogan for which beer? Reassuringly expensive.
Never heard that slogan.
I'm picturing
I've
like
never heard it either.
green beer. What was
Oh
the
yeah.
beer?
Elaborate.
Heineken? Are you thinking
Yeah, I'm
Heineken?
thinking Heineken.
It's not Heineken, but it is in a green bottle. Stella Artois.
Oh.
All right, last question. In which German city is the world's biggest beer festival, Oktoberfest, traditionally celebrated?
Berlin.
Zurich.
A clue.
Munich.
Oh, I was going to say that. Oh.
And here's another fun fact. The largest Oktoberfest outside of Munich, Germany is in
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Really?
That's right. Yes. Oktoberfest, Cincinnati. We are a huge German town. Lots of immigrants from Germany in our town.
So do you still go to Oktoberfest?
I actually, the last 3 or 4 years, I have worked at the Oktoberfest. I pour beer with my friend Jenny. She belongs to a swim club, a nonprofit swim club. So they get to pour beer at the Oktoberfest, and all the tips they earn goes towards their
Goes to the club.
swim
Yeah,
club.
that's cool.
It's fun.
So Mark and I usually do that with Jenny and Dale. It's usually a fun little double date night. Slinging beer at the Oktoberfest.
I feel like
Well, that
We
was
have a
super
little-
fun.
Little restaurant bar here called Ziggy's who have an Oktoberfest every year, and they label it as the largest Oktoberfest in the Caribbean.
Probably is the only
There's-
Oktoberfest in the
Exactly.
Caribbean.
They have 300 people show up for it, so
Well, that's fun.
it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Does not compare to the Cincinnati deal though.
That's
So
pretty
we're
good.
citing our source. Where did you get this quiz from?
Oh, yes. This quiz came from ultimatequizquestions.com/beer quiz questions.
Is there one last question that you should ask?
There are actually like 12 more questions I could choose from. Okay. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Which brewery is claimed to be the oldest in the United States? I feel like you guys should know
Real
this
Adam.
one.
Oh, that's a good guess.
I think that they might have been one of the original craft breweries, but that is not the answer.
Yingling.
I'm going back to Budweiser.
Dean, you have a guess?
Yeah, I'll stick with Budweiser.
Yingling, you were right, Elsie. Did you see me get excited when you said it?
Never would have
Okay.
guessed that.
Label.
Okay, I have a couple more. Out of Bud Light, Amstel Light, and Miller High Life Light, which beer has the lowest alcohol content? Our choices again are Bud Light, Amstel Light, and Miller High Life Light.
Miller.
Amstel.
Bud Light.
Amstel Light at 3.5 ABV.
Oh, LC
Miller.
just took a commanding lead.
Mhm.
Miller High Life Light has 4.1% and Bud Light 4.2%. All right, this question I think has come from a relatively new-ish brewery. Which beer brand makes the beer Elvis Juice?
Never even heard of it.
Sounds really gross.
Is it brewed in Memphis?
Yeah, it's gotta
No,
be.
it's brewed actually in 2 countries. This is not on this quiz sheet, but I just know this. I have some beer knowledge in my brain.
That's where she keeps it.
That's where I keep it. There's actually there's a brewery in Columbus and Cincinnati. And there's another brewery, and I think it's in another country, but I can't remember which one. The answer is Brewdog.
Never
And
heard of it.
actually in Columbus, they have the Brewdog Hotel. You can rent a room that has beer taps in it.
I've heard of that.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Pretty cool. Okay, in the early days,
I'm
beer
out.
was what?
What flavor is Elvis juice?
Oh, it is an IPA. Yeah, you would think it'd be like some kind of fun banana farmhouse or something, but it's not. It's an IPA. And it's damn delicious. And that's what Beer Quiz says. It's damn delicious. Okay, in the early days, beer was only available to buy in kegs and bottles. Which brewery was the first to sell beer in cans in the United States?
Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch.
I agree with Dean.
Yeah, I've actually never even heard of this brewery. I didn't even give Tracy a chance to answer.
I think it's Red Dog Brewing Company.
It's G. Kruger Brewing Company from Newark, New Jersey, who first sold beer in cans in 1935. By the way, when we did the tour of Rheingeist, we got to see the canning process. It is fascinating. They can fill, I'm not going to remember the number, but it was a ridiculous amount of cans per minute, like hundreds of cans per minute. And they have this process that it's this piece of equipment came from Italy, because he said all the cool stuff comes from Italy. But there's basically this capsule that holds the 12 ounces of beer, goes all the way inside the can, like to the bottom of the can, and then opens up and removes itself from the can so that the beer goes in with no foam so that they can
Oh, that's
tap it
cool.
immediately.
That's really cool. We didn't get
pretty-
to see that. I don't know that they have the same type of process. It's a little bit on a smaller scale at Leatherback.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's manual right now.
Mhm.
Yeah. Rheingeist, again, they're the 25th largest in the nation, I guess, but
Yeah.
they have a huge operation. Like all of their brewing happens in the brewery and over the Rhine, but they also have a huge storage facility on Spring Grove Avenue where they store that's where all the logistics take place. Because if you've ever been to over the Rhine, you can't imagine like semi trucks coming in and out of there for distribution. So they ship it all over to Spring Grove where they do that. Well, you guys, this was a super fun episode. And I think our challenge for our listeners is to learn all you can about a local business where you live. It doesn't necessarily have to be a brewery. That's what we chose, and that was a ton of fun. But just some local business that you've maybe been a little curious about. We'll even help you with some of the questions you can ask. Just check out our blog on our website. It's a challenge for you, Tracy.
I know.
Note to self.
Yeah. Dean, thank you so much for this challenge. Like Tracy, I probably wouldn't have scheduled a brewery tour on my own. So thank you for that nudge. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Sure.
And thank you, fellow explorer, for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to Siren Soapbox wherever you're listening to this podcast. And don't forget to check out our new YouTube channel. I challenge you to be an early subscriber. Pretty sure you won't regret it. You can find our YouTube channel and that blog that I just mentioned all on our website, sirensoapbox.com. And until next time, dive in, stay curious, and be happy. It was very sing-songery at the end. Oh, oh, be happy.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Siren Soapbox, and a special thank you to C Strings for providing our music. Snag their latest EP from iTunes today. Follow the Sirens on all the social medias, and don't forget to tell your friends about us. Like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll catch you next time on another episode of Siren Soapbox.